All right. You're probably asking yourself a few questions as we've been through a bunch of this volcano stuff. One being, how in the world do we predict a volcanic eruption? And so we're going to talk about that. And then the second thing we're going to look at is, you're probably thinking, why do all these dumb people live near volcanoes? And I would always answer that by saying, wouldn't you like it to be warm enough where you live, where your only clothing choice every day was what t-shirt to wear with what pair of shorts? I know I would like that. And I imagine several of you would. And that's why people live in Hawaii, as an example. Okay. People live in Seattle because there's lots of good jobs there. Anyway, they're not ignorant to what they're living around. They are aware of what's going on. And so they don't take those risks without knowing what risks they're taking. Okay, so how do we predict volcanic eruptions? There are multiple ways that we can do it. But monitoring a volcano for signs of moving magma will allow us to warn people and save lives. So it's obvious why we want to do eruption prediction. Okay, it's kind of an easy one. So what's the first thing we can use to determine and predict an eruption? An increase in the number of earthquakes. And this happens because as magma moves upward, it fractures the rock around it. Those fractures allow the rock to move and creates a bunch of earthquakes. So an increase in the number of earthquakes lets scientists know that magma is moving upward. Also, as the magma moves upward, it pushes the ground above it and causes it to deform and create these bulges. And that can let scientists know that magma is moving upward. Here you have a picture of Mount St. Helens deforming on the north side. We can use GPS to monitor that so that the scientists don't actually have to be there. They can get those measurements of how the ground is changing. And we can also look at an increase in gases. And we've talked about this before. The reason why gases stay in magma is they're under pressure. If the magma gets closer to the surface, there's less surface over it. And so the pressure decreases and gases can start to bubble out of that magma. And so if we get an increase in the number of gases, that can let us know that magma is getting close to the surface. These scientists are measuring directly on the volcano, or they can go and measure at a distance using an infrared camera to determine that. There is one small problem so far with the efforts at predicting volcanic eruptions is we can get all of this information. We can see all of these signs that an eruption seems like it's going to happen. For example, Mount St. Helens had that huge eruption in 1980. It showed all these signs. It showed all the same signs in 2004 and didn't really have much of an eruption as a result of that. So one of the problems is that we cannot really determine the size of the eruption yet. That's still something that scientists are trying to pinpoint and work on indicators of that. They base it mostly on a past history of the volcano when they're trying to make predictions about what type of eruption it might have. And they want to get this right, because if they tell people that you need to evacuate, move all yourself and your animals and your family out of your home, and then the volcano doesn't erupt, the next time they tell people to evacuate, there's not going to be as many people that will do it. So it's important that they are as correct and accurate as they can be on this. Okay, so what do we do about these people who live near volcanoes? We're going to talk about 5 areas where people live near volcanoes, and you're going to write down some information about each one. We're taking notes on this note sheet right here, okay? So you're going to be filling in the table on the bottom. What are the hazards that each area faces, and how do they deal with that? Okay, so the first place is Hawaii, and generally they have to deal with lava flows. They've done a lot of different stuff. They've done things like dig a trench, and then the lava comes and goes in that trench and goes down the trench and then burns down their neighbor's house, which is kind of a bummer for them, but not so bad for you. They've done berms. They even used, after World War II, they used some bombs to try to drop bombs on the lava flows to make them stop. But then they just realized lava doesn't move very fast. We know what we're up against. And so we're just going to accept that some damage will be done and some people will have to move or rebuild their homes. So that's really what they do in Hawaii, is they accept that it's going to cause damage, and they don't get too worked up about that. In Seattle, they live really close to Mount Rainier. Mount Rainier has more glacial ice on its peak than all of the other peaks in the Cascade Mountains in Washington, Oregon, and California put together. And a lot of the areas around Seattle are built on old lahar deposits from Mount Rainier. And so they know that they are in a dangerous place. And as a result, they educate the public about the hazard. They set up evacuation plans, like we have a fire drill here at the high school. They also have fire drills, but they also do lahar drills where they have to get everybody out of the school and up to a high point near the high school or near the school in a certain amount of time. And they've set up warning systems, lahar detection systems on the mountain that will give them as much as 45 minutes warning before the lahar would actually be in their town. The next one up is Iceland. There's a small island south of Iceland. The main industry in Iceland is fishing, and that small island has the only protected harbor that you could put a ship in to dock, and it wouldn't get beat up by the North Atlantic waves. In the 1970s, a rift opened and started shooting out fountains of tephra and lava right next to a town that was basically the same size as Polson. You can see the fountains of lava shooting out of the vents in one of these pictures, and they realized that the lava was going to flow out and close off the harbor and possibly flow into the town as well. And so they evacuated most of the people, and they decided what they're going to do is set up these pumps and pump seawater out onto the lava flows on the front of the lava flows and stop the lava flows. But what they found out is they couldn't pump enough water on the front to stop the lava flow cool enough to stop it. So they had to get up on top. And what they found out is if they cooled 2 inches of the top, they could actually walk on it. And so they dragged hoses up there, but then the lava was jagged and it cut up the hoses. And so then they realized that if they cooled 4 inches, they could actually drive a bulldozer up on top and smooth out a road to put the hoses on. And so they worked in shifts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And some days they would have to go back to their home and dig down to their front door through all the tephra to get into their house. And after several months of erupting, it stopped erupting, and they preserved the town and preserved the harbor, and everybody moved back. So they chose to fight the volcano, which is an interesting decision, but again, dealing with lava and not explosive ash. Next up is the Philippines in 1991, 48 hours before a massive eruption of Mount Pinatubo, which is 18 times larger than Mount St. Helens eruption. They evacuated tens of thousands of people from around the volcano and saved those lives because it had a massive explosive eruption, huge ash clouds, awful pyroclastic flows, created all these lahars, really devastated the area. It permanently shut down a U.S. military base there. And it actually caused the temperature on the planet to drop 1 full degree the next year because so much ash went up into the air. But they saved lives because they evacuated people. So that was cool. In Japan, all these people live in very close proximity to volcanoes. Basically, all of the islands that they live on are volcanic islands. So they live at the base of them, all around them. And so in Japan, they do everything they possibly can to mitigate and reduce the loss of life and the damage from volcanoes. So they monitor the volcanoes, they educate the public, they set up these warning systems that are keyed to your cell phone, so you get a warning within seconds, maximizing your opportunity to follow the evacuation plans and get out. And they've even set up these diversion dams, a series of dams where a lahar would come in and fill up a reservoir, and then if there was too much, it would flow over and fill up another reservoir, and thus basically decreasing all the lahar material that would actually reach the city. So these people who live near volcanoes, they're not dummies, and they're going to do everything they can to protect themselves and reduce the loss of life and damage to their cities. What you're going to do today is you are going to work on your project today, okay, so that you can get that done. Good luck.